Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Harry Potter review series, and today at long last we're going to be looking at the PC version of Chamber of Secrets. But before we get started, I just wanted to apologize for the poor quality of the Sorcerer's Stone PC review, because I think I was so happy to get the game running, I didn't really think about how that footage was going to look. To be honest, when I was recording it, it all came out relatively smooth, but once I started putting it in the editor, it was a little choppy, and I'm kind of embarrassed that video is on the channel as one of the newer videos, because I have sort of streamlined to a much better sense of quality on the channel in terms of what the videos look like, and that one just kind of looks janky would be one word to describe it. It's literally like it's running 2 frames a second. So I wanted to spend a lot of time trying to get the footage for Chamber of Secrets and the Prisoner of Azkaban PC games running as smooth as I could so we don't run into that problem again. I might remake the Sorcerer's Stone PC game review at some point in the future, not right now, got too many other things going on, but maybe in the future I'll just run through it quick and just redo the footage to match it with the audio, but not really something I'm working on right now. So without any further ado, let's just dive right in. Now, I actually have a very brief memory of this version of Chamber of Secrets. The DVD of the film actually had the demo on it, and I downloaded that and played that a ton as a kid. It was just one little section, and it lasted maybe 30 minutes tops, but I generally liked it. Still, I chose the console version over the PC version at the end of the day, and that goes back to the thing I've already sort of established on this channel in previous Harry Potter reviews in regards to why I'm so new to the handhelds and the PC games, is that I don't want to sound like I'm console elitist, and I think that that's better than the PC stuff, but you gotta remember, at that point in time, I'm seeing a console game that looks like this versus a Game Boy game that looks like this, and my 7-8-year-old mind just is going with the prettier thing, honestly. I mean, you show me a shiny ball, and I'm gonna go, ooh, shiny ball. So, yeah, that's the only reason why. I mean, I'm not looking into specs or how it plays or anything like that. My brain is not comprehending that kind of quality, so I'm just looking at what looks better and what I think is the better thing. So I see the console version looking as nice as it does. I'm not really paying much attention to anything else. So I didn't really look into the PC games when I was a kid. Also, playing games on the PC, I don't know. I grew up playing a lot of PC games. They weren't necessarily ports of games I was playing on consoles. They were usually games just made for PC. Seriously, I can make a whole video about those types of games I played if I get half of them to run on my laptop nowadays, but maybe a video for another time. But anyway, I think we've waited long enough to look at this game, so again, let's just get straight into it. So the story of Chamber found here is probably the closest out of the book in comparison to the console release. Stephen Fry narrates the game, and some of his lines are taken straight from the novel. Fry's narration bookends each day that passes in-game, and it helps make the story feel like it's progressing over the actual school term, rather than feeling like Harry's second year is over in a week. Seriously, in some of the earlier Harry Potter games, the way it's set up, how you go from class to class and the school term ends after like 6 days, it's kind of funny. I know it's game logic and you're not supposed to think about it like that, but this does a lot to make it feel like you're actually progressing through a full term at the school. We actually even started Privet Drive for what I think is the only time in the series. Like, it's rendered and everything. We see Harry's bedroom, and hell, Dobby's even showing up here, even though it's just for this one scene. Now, while this seems like a little thing to get excited over, I kind of respect them for including this part, because the real answer to why the Dursleys are often relegated to either a still image or brief mention or skipped over entirely is because developers probably figure you'll save a bunch of time and money making those assets that are only going to be on screen for, 2 minutes tops? Whereas the console version started us off at the Burrow and then Diagon Alley, the game here skips over all that, but shows us cutscenes of Harry and the Weasleys encountering Lockhart and Flourish and Blotts. After that, we get the same lame excuse that the Hogwarts Express just up and left Harry and Ron behind, and I was a bit disappointed at this because you just showed Dobby not more than 5 seconds ago, so I was kind of hoping that they would utilize that plot point from the book, but like I said, he's only in the bedroom scene, so sadly not the case. After all this, the major beats from the book happen, albeit with some slight alterations. Ron doesn't get jinxed after Malfoy calls Hermione a mudblood, which we actually see that cutscene in this version. There's no rogue bludger like in the PlayStation version, nor is Colin Creevey present. Harry doesn't speak Parseltongue to save Justin, just kind of tells the snake to, leave him alone. And again, it's only Harry that uses the Polyjuice potion like in the console versions. There are 2 additions here that were mysteriously absent from the console versions, though. One is that Lockhart actually appears in the endgame, and there's an extended cutscene for the Tom Riddle flashback. I was rather surprised to see that Lockhart made it into the final areas of the game before Harry entered the Chamber of Secrets. Unlike how in the console versions, he was there at the beginning, taught us one class, and then mysteriously vanished out of nowhere. Now, while he does appear here, the game never outright mentions that Lockhart is a fraud who's been taking credit for what other wizards have done. He just kind of seems scared of going down into the chamber, and then he turns all evil for a second and tries to erase our memories, and then that's kind of it. I went from applauding and being very, very happy. Seriously, I ran into my notes and wrote, Lockhart is here, and the game's ending, and I was very surprised. But then the scene unfolded and I realized that they didn't fully commit to it, so I went from applauding the game for doing something extra, only to be left baffled as to why they just didn't follow through and do the scene from the book with all the details intact. As for the additional cutscene with Riddle, I always hated how in the console version it says that Tom is going to show Harry who opened the Chamber of Secrets, but then we get that cheap audio-only thing. Seriously, this has always bugged me ever since I first got the game. Like, I always expected there to be an actual cutscene. This whole audio-only thing just felt weird, even back when I first played. Here you actually see Hagrid talking to Riddle and Aragog escape from the chest, which I felt was actually a nice touch. Gameplay-wise, though, it's a similar structure to what was in Sorcerer's Stone, with a few tweaks and changes. You still cast spells by holding the mouse button over objects, and the symbol will pop up with the corresponding spell when you can cast it. And this worked great last time, so I'm glad they kept it intact. Harry also has his jump ability back, and he can still auto-climb up smaller ledges, which keeps the platforming around from the last game as well. Learning spells has changed a little bit in comparison to last time. Now, last time we had to trace the spell symbol with the mouse cursor multiple times to pass the class, even though it didn't really give you a lot of retries on that. You kind of had to get it on your first go. And at first I assumed it was going to be the same thing here when Lockhart presented us the symbol for the first spell to learn. However, you no longer have to trace this symbol. Instead, I didn't mind the tracing minigame last time, but I definitely will prefer this method over the last, since I'm playing this game on a laptop with a wireless mouse, and that is not how this game was intended to be played. These games were made for old school big ass PCs that were on a desk and had a mouse pad and a keyboard on a slide out tray. Even with optimal conditions, tracing it could still have been a challenge because your mouse pad might not have been big enough, or the trackball in the mouse might not have been moving as smoothly. Remember mouse trackballs? God, I'm old. I'm fine with this mechanic as it's a simple little minigame, and the spellcasting system is still the same overall. You actually start the game with almost every spell that we learned in the last game, which is pretty impressive. So Flipendo, Lumos, and Alhamor all return right at the start, which I will say is a big change from how the console versions handle it, where it seems like Harry gets obliviated at the end of every game and suddenly forgets the spells he just learned a year ago. This time you have Rictus Sempra, which replaces Flipendo as the attack Jinx, Diffindo, which cuts ropes and branches, Scourge, which removes the ectoplasm, which for some reason here in this version looks like Jello, and finally Spongify, which was actually from the Sorcerer's Stone remake game and the first PC Sorcerer's Stone game, that made certain carpets propel Harry upwards in a jumping fashion. Now, after learning the spell, Harry gets to enter a challenge chamber to practice the spell, and this works a little differently to what was in the last PC game. This time you start with a decreasing counter of points, with the goal to collect stars to raise the number of points. Each challenge room has a different number of stars, and some are out in the open while others might be hidden out of sight after you solve a quick puzzle or explore a bit. Searching for all the stars is not too taxing, and honestly, thanks to the ease of the spellcasting system, you'll definitely go out of your way to grab them all. If there's one thing to say about these areas, it's that I really missed Wingardium Leviosa, because the replacement the game makes you do is a tad excessive. See, instead of levitating anything into place like you did in the last game, you now stun most enemies and then are forced to spam Flipendo until they move into the correct spot. It's not horrible by any sense, but it definitely made me miss the ease of Wingardium Leviosa, since there Harry just said the one spell and I was able to move it around on my own, versus here I have to hear Harry yelling Flipendo in my ear every single time I click the button. So yeah, trust me, was really wishing for some ease of access on this one. Also, all of the challenge rooms can be replayed either to get a better score, find any missing stars, or missing collectibles, and I was very happy the game had this feature, since it doesn't lock you out like the console versions did. Seriously, I hate that. How am I supposed to find all of the cards in the game if you lock me out of certain areas and I can never go back there? The best part about the gameplay is that there are now puzzles scattered all around Hogwarts, and it's a joy to learn new spells and then explore the castle for secrets. The secrets are once again the collectibles of Bertie Bot Beans and the wizard cards. Wizard cards are hidden around Hogwarts and within the challenge chamber themselves. The cards once again grant you more life once you gain 10 of them, which again isn't necessary, but is a nice incentive to find them. You can also trade cards with students again. In fact, trading with students seemingly has replaced Fred and George's shop in this one. See, each student has a different item to trade beans for, though the only important thing they'll ever have is wizard cards. They also have potion ingredients that you can make to raise your stamina, but these ingredients are often found around just for free as you walk around each of the rooms, so I wouldn't waste the beans on them. Beans are everywhere once again though, and if by some chance you're not flipendoing the hell out of everything, the game will now reward you with the Bean Bonus Room. You're given access to this room after the game counts how many house points you've gained for the day. If you're in the lead, and trust me, you will be, you'll get access to the room. Here you're given a set time to grab all the beans you can, and you can easily rack up over 200 a shot each time you pass through this room. There's no puzzles to solve here, just beans to pick up, although some of the areas are blocked off by certain spells that you'll need to wait until you get later, but all that really does is open up more beans for you to collect. It's not like you have to solve a puzzle before you can get access to them. Now there's also two mini-games to engage in when you're not in class. The first is Quidditch. Strangely, aside from the brief tutorial game you're forced into, Quidditch is not a part of the main narrative in this one. If you don't walk down to the pitch on your own, you'll never actually play a game of Quidditch aside from that tutorial training mission. You get access to 6 matches, and the last 3 are locked until the end game, so you can't win the Quidditch Cup early. Now, while you might think that since Quidditch was fine in the last PC game, there would be no need to tweak it, well, get ready to be a tad disappointed. Gone is the free control of flying, of speeding up and chasing the snitch down through the rings. Now we get an on-rails section where you have to use the mouse to hover Harry behind the snitch, and whenever the other team's seeker gets close, you have to literally beat the crap out of them until you knock them out. After you do, the snitch bar will fill up, and then once it's fully filled, you left click and you get the snitch. While it functions well enough, it's too simplistic, and honestly, I would have liked the free roam flying back from the last game. I mean, what was so wrong about that? The controls were pretty solid. Why strip that out? Here, you can just use one hand and barely pay attention. You button click until the other seeker flies away, and then just one click to catch the snitch. And in a strange twist, the game actually shows Harry going through a ring when he first sees the snitch, but then the rings vanish and you're in this auto-catching section on rails. It's like they programmed all the matches from the leftovers of the last game, just editing out the ring section. All 6 matches took about 10 minutes, and it might have gone on longer, if I actually could fly. I had a feeling Quidditch might have been different when I didn't see the option to play it from the menu like in the past game. Seriously, not something I guess they were proud of this go, so kind of just tried to bury it. The second minigame is the Dueling Club. Dueling plays out a bit more like the PS1 version than the console version here. Duels give you access to the spells Rictusempra, Mimblewimble, and Expelliarmus. Rictusempra is the basic attack. Mimblewimble can cause your opponent to get confused and cast the wrong way for the next spell, while Expelliarmus just sends all spells back at your opponent. Attacking is made a bit more challenging here, as the longer you charge the spell, the more damage you'll cause, but you can also risk getting hit here. There's a good strategy here of waiting until your opponent is firing a spell before you shoot yours. The AI is a bit wonky here, as you'll be sure they're in the middle of firing Rictusempra, but once you shoot your attack spell, they'll quickly shift to Expelliarmus, seemingly at random. Also, Mimblewimble is kind of a waste, since I thought you could use it to confuse the opponent and then take a free hit, but they get over this so quickly that you'll barely know that they were confused. The arenas also have obstacles that might get in the way, which cause you to have to move around, which keeps it from being too simplistic, because, God knows I want to play a dueling game where I stand in one spot and win instantly. Yeah, seriously, take notes here, Half-Blood Prince. The early duels are pretty easy, but I actually had to get engaged to finish off some of the last few. Now, while Quidditch and dueling are fun, there is a bit of a downside to spending time doing them, and that's that there's no reward for actually finishing them. You'll beat everyone in the dueling club, and all that happens is you get to see Harry's name at the top of a list. True, you earn beans for beating each student, but like I said, beans aren't really in short supply thanks to that bonus room. You don't even get a wizard card for beating them all. And the same can be said for the Quidditch matches. You win all 6 matches, and sure, you get a cutscene where Dumbledore gives you the cup, but that's it. On a side note, you can trade beans with Fred and George for a Nimbus 2001 broomstick and Quidditch armor, which I'm just telling you right now are both pointless. Seriously, I ran one game with the standard broom and then one game with the Nimbus, and didn't really notice much of a difference. Also, I beat up the Team Seekers so fast that the Quidditch armor is just as pointless too, so if you're doing it just to get 100% for everything in the game, trade with them, otherwise it's not worth it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed doing both activities, as simple as they are, but I was a bit let down that there wasn't a reward. Like, what if completing the duels granted you a stronger Flipendo spell, and maybe if completing the Quidditch matches let you free roam fly around the pitch at least? I mean, I'm not looking for something crazy here, I'm just saying, how cool would it have been to actually stop the main campaign, do one of these quests, and get something for it? Like, that's something you want the player to do in these types of situations. You want them to be rewarded for taking time off pausing the main game and getting involved in them. I did them just to see what would happen, just because I'm reviewing it, but if I was actually doing this, I'd probably be like, well, there's 10 minutes of my life I could have spent on something else, just finishing the main game. It's fun, yes, but, I mean, it would have been nice to actually have gotten something and be like, well, I'm glad I did all those duels, because after I was done, I didn't say I'm glad I did that, I was more like, yeah, I guess that was fun. There's only 2 boss fights in this game, Aragog and the Basilisk. The Aragog fight is painfully simple. You just go around spamming spells, and there's no strategy here whatsoever. You just point and click at Aragog, and he drops. There's no waiting for a weak spot or avoiding any series of attacks. You just fire away. I did get nervous at the start of the Basilisk fight, because he comes out of the statue and stays in one spot, and you legit just have to hit him repeatedly. Also, you get the Sword of Gryffindor again, but like in the console versions, for some reason it acts more like a wand than a sword, but whatever. The second phase of this fight definitely made up for the first bit. Here, the Basilisk will pop out from the floorboards, and you have to wait until he starts spitting acid before you hit him, or he'll automatically dodge and run away. And it creates a nice tension as you build up the spell and avoid the acid, and then fire at the correct moment. Sadly, there's no boss fights in the challenge areas, which I felt was a bit of a letdown after having bosses in the console versions, even if they were just a repeat gargoyle. The presentation is on par with the last game with a few enhancements. The main character models have great animation with facial features and movement, eyes move around, lips move when speaking, and characters are expressive. I kind of felt like the characters in the first game barely moved their mouths, and actually come to think of it, I'm not even sure their lips did flap or anything. Can't really remember. Voice acting is solid as it was in the first game, and in a surprising move, Harry actually talks a lot more in this one. He'll comment on things and react to certain situations, and I like this a lot because in the first game he was a bit of a mute. Actually, come to think of it, in Sorcerer's Stone's, all of the versions of Sorcerer's Stone, and even some of these Chamber of Secrets games, Harry was kind of a mute. He didn't really start talking that much until Prisoner of Azkaban, I guess, in terms of a lot of dialogue. But I get why they do that. It's so that you feel like you're Harry, so he doesn't talk as much. But it doesn't really work for a character that's based on, like, an actual character versus a game character that is supposed to be the player. I get what they're doing, but it doesn't really make sense. Just have the guy talk. The design of Hogwarts is similar to the last game with a few new areas that they've added. Once again, I love this aesthetic. The warm feeling you get while traveling the corridors and secret passage makes you feel like you're at Hogwarts. As much as I love the castle design from the console versions, I feel like the PC games made it so much more cozy and comforting. Jeremy Soul's score is a mix of tracks from the console version and the last game and brand new tracks, and it all sounds amazing and more beautiful than it has any right to be. The new tracks fit in nicely and sound like the tracks that easily could have been right in the console version. I knew that this score was going to kick ass immediately right from the intro, as it plays a remixed version of the theme from the console versions with this beautiful string section that sounds like it could have been ripped straight out of the movie. I know I've been overwhelmingly positive with the soundtrack in these earlier titles, and I think a lot of that stems from the nostalgic value, but also probably how the fact that after Jeremy Soule stopped making the music for these games, the soundtracks just kind of fell into that generic category of, yeah, it sounds kind of bombastic and kind of I mean, don't get me wrong, we're going to be talking about the music in the later games too, but I'm going to tell you right now, aside from a couple of the main themes and one or two little offsetting pieces, not a whole lot of amazing music, although there's a reason why Soul's music appears even in some of the later games, come to think about it. Overall, I had a great time experiencing Harry's second year on PC. While there was a few changes from the design of the last game, I still had a lot of fun making my way through the game. Sure, I was bummed out about the lack of flying for Quidditch, but I liked the challenge chambers, I loved gaining new spells and exploring the castle to find new secrets. It was a quick run through, but I can honestly see myself playing this again at some point in the future. If you enjoyed the console versions, then I would definitely recommend you give this a shot, as this version has easily become one of my favorite games in the Harry Potter franchise. Seriously, I think it's probably second to the console versions. It's just a fun experience. Like I said, short, but you do get a lot of fun out of it, and that's all that really matters. Again, I'm not looking for anything amazing, and again, considering that you can only play these games now by downloading them for free, you're getting what you're paying for, honestly. But even paying full price for this back in the day, I'd still be confident with it, because I definitely could see myself spending a lot of time on it and giving it another run through after I'd beaten it once or twice. So, you know, a money well spent. So come back next time when the Harry Potter review series continues. Thanks for watching.